He offered simple help, unaware she was one of the richest alien queens alive. The spaceport was alive with noise and movement, a mixture of engines, chatter, and the hum of distant machinery. Humans and aliens mingled in a crowded area where ships of all shapes and sizes lined the docking bays. Among them, Jack Harper moved steadily, carrying a toolbox in one hand, a cloth tucked into his belt, and a calm expression that seemed almost out of place in the chaos. He had always found a strange comfort in helping others fix their machines. To him, it was a way of making sense of the universe, one spark, one wire, and one adjustment at a time. Jack had grown up on a small colony planet where resources were limited, and every citizen had to contribute in some practical way. He had learned the value of patience and observation early, noticing how a tiny misalignment in a component could cause a ship to malfunction entirely. Over the years, he had honed his skills until fixing a complicated starship system seemed as natural as breathing. His reputation was simple but solid. Travelers knew that if Jack said he could repair something, he meant it, and they trusted him without question. On this particular morning, Jack noticed a crowd gathering around a ship that seemed far too sleek and polished to belong to the average traveler. The vessel was an unfamiliar shape, with smooth curves that glinted in the artificial sunlight and unusual symbols etched along the hull. The crowd whispered among themselves, casting nervous glances at the owner of the ship, a figure standing near the doorway with a calm, almost regal presence. She was tall, with skin that shimmered faintly in the light and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her hair, long and flowing, had a color Jack could not name. She carried herself with a dignity that made the bustling spaceport feel somehow quieter in her presence. Jack approached with his usual calm, unaware of who she truly was. "Need some help?" he called, keeping his voice polite and neutral. He had learned that kindness and simplicity went a long way, especially when people were stressed over damaged ships or tight schedules. The woman turned her head, regarding him with curiosity rather than irritation. Her eyes flicked over his tools and his hands, which were steady and confident. She inclined her head slightly, a gesture Jack almost mistook for polite acknowledgement. "My ship is malfunctioning," she said, her voice soft but commanding in a way that made people instinctively take a step back. "It needs repair before my departure." Jack nodded as if this were an ordinary request. "No problem, let me have a look," he said. "I might need a few tools, but I think we can get this sorted quickly." He didn't notice the subtle shift in the crowd. Some whispered, some gasped, and some simply stared. They were noticing her, but Jack remained focused entirely on the work ahead. As he examined the ship, he realized immediately that the components were unfamiliar. The engineering was elegant, precise, and complex in ways he had never seen, but not impossible. Jack smiled to himself. This was the kind of challenge he enjoyed most, something that required attention, creativity, and patience rather than brute force. "I can fix this," he murmured under his breath, more to reassure himself than anyone else. The woman watched silently, her interest piqued. She had seen many humans before, most of them frantic, arrogant, or unwilling to do what was necessary. But this human, Jack, was calm, methodical, and confident without arrogance. He treated her ship with the same care he would treat a simple trade vessel. She tilted her head slightly, intrigued by his simplicity. Jack began his work, opening panels and inspecting circuits, muttering observations quietly. His hands moved with practiced precision, loosening tiny fasteners, adjusting delicate wires, and testing systems. He explained his steps out loud, as he always did when working in public spaces. "This component is misaligned. It's small, but it affects the stabilization systems. If I reposition it, we should see improvement immediately." The woman nodded slowly, listening to him. She didn't interrupt, nor did she offer suggestions. She was content to watch, a silent observer of human skill in motion. Around them, the crowd remained hushed, some moving closer to watch the work, others shifting uneasily. Whispers circulated. Who was she? And how could this human fix her ship when others might fail? Hours passed, and Jack worked tirelessly, sweat beading faintly on his brow despite the controlled climate of the docking bay. He replaced worn circuits, adjusted delicate mechanisms, and tested systems again and again, each time noting small improvements. The woman observed every movement, impressed not by speed but by precision and patience. In her experience, few beings could commit themselves fully to a task without seeking immediate reward or recognition. Jack did not seek her approval, her wealth, or her influence. He only sought to repair the ship, and that fascinated her. Finally, after careful adjustments, the ship powered up with a smooth hum. Lights flickered across the hull, systems came online, and Jack leaned back, wiping his hands on the cloth at his belt. "That should do it," he said simply. The woman's eyes widened slightly. She did not often encounter beings who could handle her technology with such skill. "It is remarkable," she said, her voice carrying a note of genuine admiration. "You have done what few could attempt." Jack shrugged modestly. "I just follow the instructions the machines give me," he said with a smile. "And sometimes the machines are clever than we think, you just have to listen." She tilted her head, considering his words. "Humans, you are unpredictable," she said quietly, almost to herself. "And yet capable." Jack laughed softly, a sound that seemed unusually human to her. "We have our moments," he said. "Some of us try to make them count." For a long while they stood in silence. Jack cleaned his tools, and the woman examined her ship. No one else dared approach them. There was a quiet respect in the space around them, a recognition of skill, patience, and perhaps something deeper, integrity. Finally, the woman spoke again. "Your work is exceptional." "I am grateful." She handed him a small device, an advanced energy cell that could power tools and systems for weeks. "Consider this a token of appreciation." Jack accepted it with a nod. "Thank you." "It's not necessary, but I appreciate it." He had learned early that reward was often less meaningful than recognition and trust. As she prepared to depart, she paused and glanced at him. "You do not know who I am?" she said, almost teasingly. "Perhaps it is better that way." "Your honesty is refreshing." Jack shook his head, smiling. "I don't need to know, I just try to help when I can." The engines of her ship roared to life, and the crowd gasped as the vessel lifted gracefully into the sky. The human who had offered simple help had repaired the most sophisticated ship in the docking bay without hesitation, and he remained unaware of the magnitude of his achievement. As she disappeared into the horizon, the woman, Queen Lyra, felt something she had rarely felt, genuine respect and admiration for a human being. She realized that wealth, power, and influence did not define strength. Character, skill, and humility were far more remarkable, and in Jack Harper, she saw all of them combined. Jack returned to his small workshop, dusting off his hands, and immediately began repairing a transport drone for a young alien trader who had been waiting patiently. To him, it was just another day, another opportunity to fix what was broken and make life a little easier. He did not yet understand that his simple help had started to change perceptions across star systems, that humans were capable of far more than anyone had anticipated. And somewhere above the bustling city, Queen Lyra considered her next moves, realizing that this human had qualities that could not be measured in credits, rank, or technology. He was clever, humble, and inventive. In short, he was human, and in her eyes, that was extraordinary. The hum of the spaceport continued around him, but Jack moved through it with quiet confidence. Ships docked and departed, travelers argued and laughed, and life went on. But one simple act of help had begun a ripple that would touch far beyond this crowded port. The galaxy would soon learn, though not yet, that humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, thinkers, and quietly, unassumingly remarkable. Jack Harper, unaware of the enormity of his actions, simply tightened a panel on a cargo drone, smiled at a child who waved at him, and prepared for the next challenge. He had no idea that the richest alien queen in the galaxy had watched him closely, intrigued, impressed, and perhaps, in a subtle way, changed forever. And as the twin suns of the trading hub glinted off polished metal and shining glass, one truth became quietly clear. Humans, in their simplicity, had a way of surprising everyone, even those who believed they had seen it all. After the remarkable day at the spaceport, Jack Harper returned to his small workshop with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The hum of machinery and the soft whir of automated tools filled the space as he carefully arranged his instruments, checking for wear and cleaning each piece meticulously. He had never expected anything extraordinary from helping a traveler fix their ship, and yet a subtle excitement lingered in the air. Something about that day felt different, though Jack could not yet place why. Meanwhile, above the bustling city, Queen Lyra observed the spaceport from the observation deck of her flagship. Though her ship had departed, She could still see the network of landing platforms and busy docking bays through the communication feed. Her mind lingered on the human who had repaired her vessel. Jack Harper's hands had moved with precision, patience, and ingenuity. He had not rushed. He had not bragged. He had simply worked with skill and care. In a galaxy where beings often judged each other by status, wealth, or power, his quiet competence was extraordinary. Lyra had decided to learn more about this human. She did not intend to reveal her identity immediately. Instead, she wanted to observe him, to understand his character, and how humans approached problems differently from other species. She had often underestimated humans, assuming them to be reckless or short-sighted. But Jack had shown her something new, resourcefulness born not from privilege, but from necessity. The next morning, Jack was already busy in his workshop when a soft chime on the doorway announced a visitor. He looked up to see a small group of aliens, representatives from various trade guilds, carrying a damaged cargo shuttle. "Hello," one of them said. "We've heard of your work. We were hoping you could help us." Jack nodded politely. "Of course, let's see what we can do." As he examined the shuttle, he realized the damage was significant. The propulsion matrix had been misaligned, some circuits were fried, and the life support system was compromised. Most human engineers would have balked at the complexity. Jack, however, smiled faintly. Challenges like these were the reason he loved his work. Each problem was a puzzle, a chance to think, adapt, and prove that skill mattered more than wealth or fear. Lyra, watching remotely, noted the same calm in Jack that she had seen the day before. He worked efficiently, analyzing the damage, suggesting replacements, and improvising with parts available in the workshop. He explained each step to the alien traders, not condescending, but in a way that invited understanding. "If we reroute the energy flow here, it will stabilize the propulsion," he said, demonstrating the adjustment. "We need to be gentle with this component. It's delicate, but we can make it work." The aliens watched, impressed by his methodical approach. Some of them whispered among themselves, marveling at a human who could repair such a complex shuttle without hesitation. Lyra smiled quietly, noting the difference between Jack and the others. He did not seek recognition or profit. He simply wanted to solve the problem. Over the next few hours, Jack worked tirelessly. He replaced damaged circuits, realigned critical systems, and tested each adjustment carefully. His hands moved with practiced precision, never fumbling, never slowing. Around him, the aliens began to relax, sensing a quiet confidence in his work. Jack explained how each modification would improve the shuttle's performance, and they listened closely, learning from him as well as observing the repair. Lyra observed each movement, noting how Jack communicated effectively without arrogance. She was fascinated by the way he adapted to the unexpected, combining practical knowledge with creativity. Humans, she realized, did not rely solely on technology or power. They relied on thought, observation, and flexibility. They found solutions in ways that no alien mind could predict. Finally, after hours of careful work, Jack stepped back. The shuttle systems glowed softly, each indicator showing optimal performance. "That should do it," he said simply, wiping his hands on his cloth. The alien traders gasped, some looking at each other in disbelief. Their shuttle, which had seemed irreparable, was now ready to depart. "Remarkable," said one of the aliens quietly. "I've never seen such skill." Jack shrugged modestly. "I just follow what the machines tell me. Sometimes it's simple observation, sometimes a bit of creativity, but it usually works out." Lyra's eyes softened as she watched. She had expected to see humans as unpredictable and flawed, yet Jack's patience, ingenuity, and humility defied every expectation. She realized that the human capacity for problem-solving was rooted not in force or wealth, but in a kind of quiet intelligence and moral consistency. The next day, Lyra decided to visit Jack in person, though she kept her true identity hidden. She disguised herself in simple attire, blending in with other travelers at the spaceport. Jack was adjusting a power regulator on a small passenger drone when she approached. "Hello again," she said, her voice calm, almost casual. Jack looked up and smiled. "Back for another repair?" he asked, already curious. "Or are you just visiting?" "I have another problem," she said, producing a small, sophisticated component. "It's delicate. I don't trust anyone else to fix it properly." Jack nodded, inspecting the piece carefully. It was unlike anything he had seen before, yet he immediately understood the principles behind it. "We can make this work," he said, examining the connections and noting the areas that required careful adjustment. As he worked, the two began to talk. Lyra asked about his life, his motivations, and why he chose such a humble path despite his talent. Jack explained that he enjoyed the process of creation and repair. He liked helping others, seeing the satisfaction of a problem solved, and knowing that even small acts could have a larger impact. Lyra listened, intrigued by his philosophy. She had assumed humans were primarily self-interested, yet Jack's motivations were entirely different. He found meaning not in wealth or recognition, but in mastery and kindness. Hours passed, and Lyra continued to observe Jack as he meticulously repaired the component. He explained each step as he went, demonstrating how small adjustments could lead to significant improvements. She was impressed by his attention to detail, his patience, and his calm persistence. When he finally finished, the component hummed to life, operating flawlessly. Lyra could hardly hide her admiration. "You are remarkable," she said softly, almost reverently. Jack smiled faintly, wiping his hands. "Thanks, it's just work, really. I like seeing things function properly." Lyra tilted her head, considering him carefully. "It's more than that," she said. "It's rare to find someone who works with such dedication and humility." "You see the world differently than most humans, or aliens, do." Jack laughed quietly, a warm and genuine sound. "I guess I just notice what's in front of me. Problems, solutions, people, that's usually enough." For a moment they both stood in silence, the bustle of the spaceport fading into the background. Lyra realized that humans had something she had underestimated entirely: resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to face challenges with calm and creativity. Jack Harper embodied all of it. The next day, rumors began to spread through the spaceport about the human who had repaired two advanced alien ships with nothing but simple tools and ingenuity. Other travelers approached Jack, curious to witness his skills firsthand. Each time he treated them with the same patience, kindness, and attention to detail, never boasting or seeking recognition. Lyra continued to observe him, fascinated by his consistency. She began to wonder if humanity's greatest strength was not in technology, power, or numbers, but in the quiet, persistent intelligence and moral strength that individuals like Jack displayed every day. She decided to conduct a subtle test. A new alien trader approached, presenting a complex problem, a system so intricate it would have confounded most engineers. Jack examined it, as usual, and immediately began working, explaining his process to the trader while improvising solutions when conventional methods failed. Lyra watched, noting how Jack adapted fluidly, thinking outside of rigid protocols, using intuition and practical logic together. Hours later, the system was fully functional. The trader was astonished. "I've never seen a human work like that," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Jack smiled politely. "It's all about observation and patience," he said simply. Lyra realized then that this human's strength, and perhaps humanity's, lay in their adaptability. They did not rely solely on what was known or expected. They saw possibilities others missed. They solved problems not with force or intimidation, but with cleverness, persistence, and care. As the day ended, Jack returned to his workshop, satisfied but unaware of the magnitude of his reputation among alien travelers. Lyra, still in disguise, lingered nearby, reflecting on what she had witnessed. The human she had encountered was not just skilled. He was exceptional in a way that no wealth or power could buy. She knew she would reveal her true identity one day, but for now, she simply watched, learning from him, fascinated by the quiet genius of a human being. Jack Harper's simple acts of help were slowly changing perceptions in the galaxy, proving that even ordinary humans could achieve extraordinary things when guided by intelligence, kindness, and perseverance. And so life at the spaceport continued, humans bustling about, aliens trading and traveling, and Jack Harper quietly demonstrating that the most remarkable beings were often the ones who worked without expectation, whose greatest achievements came from simple dedication, and whose ingenuity had the power to leave even the wealthiest and most powerful in awe. Days passed at the spaceport, yet Jack Harper's routine remained unchanged. He arrived early, set up his tools, and began repairs with quiet precision. Travelers came and went, their ships varying in size, complexity, and species. Jack treated each one with the same patience and care, never showing frustration or haste. For him, there was a rhythm to the work, a balance of observation, calculation, and creativity that he found almost soothing. Lyra, still in her modest disguise, continued to observe him from a distance. She had grown fascinated with this human, whose calmness and ingenuity seemed boundless. It was not just the skill he displayed. It was the way he approached every problem with humility and curiosity. He did not treat the aliens as inferior. He did not flaunt his talent. He simply worked, letting his actions speak for him. Curiosity soon got the better of her. She decided to introduce a challenge that would truly test his abilities. She had a small, sleek device she had designed herself, something highly advanced and delicate. It was beyond the capabilities of most engineers she knew, even among humans, and she intended to see how Jack would approach it. She handed the device to him at his workshop, her expression unreadable. "This is different," Jack said, examining the device carefully. He turned it over in his hands, noting its intricate circuits and unique design. "I've never seen anything like this before, but we can figure it out." He smiled faintly, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "Every problem has a solution if you look carefully enough." Lyra observed silently, intrigued by his calm confidence. Many beings would have panicked at the complexity of the device. Jack did not. He treated it as a puzzle, and puzzles were his favorite challenges. Jack set the device on a clean workbench, opening panels carefully, examining circuits, and testing connections. His fingers moved deftly, adjusting delicate components, rewiring small nodes, and improvising where necessary. He muttered quietly as he worked, noting observations and possible improvements. "If I reroute the energy through this channel, it should stabilize the system," he said. He paused to think, tracing circuits with his fingers. "Yes, that could work, but we need a failsafe in case it fluctuates." Lyra could not hide her growing admiration. She had expected ingenuity, yes, but she had not expected such methodical patience. Humans, she thought, had a unique ability to approach problems from multiple angles at once, combining logic and intuition in ways most aliens could not. Jack exemplified that quality perfectly. Hours passed. Jack's hands never faltered, his focus unwavering. He adjusted components, tested functions, and occasionally paused to consider new approaches. Lyra noticed how he treated mistakes not as failures, but as information. Every misalignment, every short circuit became an opportunity to learn. "Humans," she murmured quietly, "they understand challenges differently. They learn from the problem itself." As the day progressed, word of Jack's work on the mysterious device spread quietly through the spaceport. Some aliens who had been skeptical began to watch from a distance, curious to see if the human could truly succeed. Whispers circulated. "How can a human fix that? It seems impossible." But Jack did not notice the attention. His focus remained on the task, his mind moving fluidly through the steps of repair, adjusting and readjusting with skill and care. He explained what he was doing in simple terms to anyone nearby who asked, making the process understandable without losing precision. Finally, after hours of careful work, the device began to respond as intended. Lights flickered on in sequence, circuits hummed with energy, and the complex system came to life under Jack's careful guidance. He leaned back, wiping his hands on a cloth, and smiled. "That should do it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief himself. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. She had anticipated skill, but not this level of ingenuity. The device, which she had considered nearly impossible to repair, now functioned flawlessly. She could hardly believe it. "You are remarkable," she said softly, her voice carrying genuine admiration. Jack looked at her and smiled modestly. "It's not that I'm remarkable," he said. "It's just paying attention, being careful, and thinking through the problem. Anyone could do it with the right focus." Lyra tilted her head. "No," she said. "This is more than skill. It is patience, observation, creativity, and persistence. You have qualities I have rarely seen." Jack laughed softly. "Well, I like to think of it as trying not to make the same mistake twice. The machines teach you if you listen." The moment stretched between them, a quiet recognition of something beyond words. Jack's humble dedication had created an impression that wealth, power, or authority could not. Lyra realized that humans possessed a strength she had underestimated entirely. They did not rely on status or intimidation. They relied on intelligence, character, and the ability to adapt. As the day faded into evening, Jack cleaned his tools and prepared for the next repair. Lyra watched him with quiet fascination, thinking about what she had seen. She realized that his approach to problems was entirely human, resilient, inventive, and consistently thoughtful. It was no wonder humans had survived and thrived despite being considered a weaker species by many. Lyra decided to push the test further. She introduced a new, complex challenge, a small spacecraft module with multiple interdependent systems deliberately damaged to test Jack's skills. When she presented it to him, he examined it with the same calm curiosity he had shown before. "All right," he said. "This looks tricky, but we can work through it. Let's see what's causing the issue." Jack began dismantling the module, checking wiring, energy conduits, and stabilization arrays. He explained each step as he worked, making the process understandable without oversimplifying. Lyra noticed how he adapted when encountering problems. Instead of panicking or following rigid procedures, he improvised, finding new ways to stabilize systems, reroute power, and test functionality. By midday, he had traced the source of the malfunction, a small, overlooked energy relay that had caused a chain reaction of minor issues. He repaired it carefully and monitored the system as it began to stabilize. "There," he said quietly. "The module should function properly now." Lyra stepped closer, amazed at his calm confidence. "I do not understand how you do this," she admitted. "Most beings would have given up long ago." Jack smiled, shrugging. "I just keep trying. Every problem has a solution if you approach it step by step. You don't have to rush, you just have to think." The module powered up fully, operating with smooth precision. Lyra's admiration deepened. This human had not just repaired a device. He had demonstrated qualities that went far beyond technical skill. Perseverance, observation, intelligence, patience, and humility. These were qualities that could not be taught, bought, or faked. Over the next several days, Jack continued to take on increasingly difficult challenges. Lyra watched, learning more about humans and their approach to life with every task he completed. Each success reinforced her belief that humans were exceptional, not because of technology or strength, but because of the way they thought, adapted, and persisted. Word began to spread across the spaceport of the human who could fix nearly anything. Travelers came from distant docking bays, curious to witness Jack Harper in action. He treated each new visitor with the same respect and care, never flaunting his abilities, never seeking reward beyond the satisfaction of a job well done. One afternoon, Lyra approached Jack more openly, still in her simple disguise. "I have another challenge," she said, holding a small, delicate device. "It is highly sensitive. Most engineers would hesitate, but I trust you to handle it." Jack accepted the device with a nod. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he said. He examined it carefully, noting unusual energy flows and circuit arrangements. "Interesting," he muttered, smiling faintly. "It's unlike anything I've worked on, but that's no problem. We'll figure it out." He began working with careful hands, methodically checking circuits, testing energy conduits, and adjusting components. Lyra observed silently, noting how he remained calm even when a small error required him to start over. He treated every setback as information, not failure. Hours passed and the device finally responded perfectly. Lyra's eyes sparkled with genuine admiration. "I am impressed," she said softly. "You have exceeded all expectations." Jack smiled faintly. "I just keep going. If you stop at the first mistake, you never learn anything. You just have to keep thinking and adjusting until it works." Lyra realized that this was the essence of human ingenuity. Persistence, observation, and adaptability allowed them to overcome challenges that others might consider impossible. Jack Harper was living proof of that truth. As the day ended, Jack returned to his workshop to organize his tools, unaware of how much he had influenced the perception of humans across the spaceport. Lyra, still in disguise, lingered nearby, quietly reflecting on what she had witnessed. Humans, she thought, were not just clever or resourceful, they were exceptional. They could take impossible challenges and make them possible, not through force, but through thought, patience, and character. For the first time, Lyra began to see humans not as a lesser species, but as unpredictable, remarkable, and quietly powerful. And Jack Harper, in his simple, patient way, had shown her everything she needed to understand why. The spaceport had grown quieter in the early morning light. the twin suns casting long shadows across the docking bays. Jack Harper was already at his workshop, moving with his usual calm efficiency. He checked his tools, organized spare parts, and began routine maintenance on a small transport drone. To anyone watching, it appeared to be just another ordinary day, yet for Jack, there was an unusual sense of anticipation in the air. Lyra had decided that today would be different. After days of observing Jack, she had learned enough to understand how remarkable humans could be. She had also decided it was time to reveal part of her true identity, though not fully. She wanted him to understand the importance of what he had accomplished, but she also wanted to see how he would react. She entered the workshop in her modest disguise, carrying a small, advanced device. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm yet carrying an unusual weight. Jack looked up, smiling warmly. "Good morning, another repair?" he asked, glancing at the device in her hands. "Yes," she replied. "It is delicate and it requires careful attention. I trust you can handle it." Jack took the device and examined it carefully. It was clearly highly advanced, unlike anything he had worked on before, yet he immediately began assessing it. He traced circuits, checked energy flows, and carefully tested its functionality. "This is interesting," he murmured. "It looks complex, but there's a pattern here. I can work with this." Lyra watched him, noticing how he approached the problem. He did not rush. He did not panic at the unfamiliar design. He studied it patiently, adjusting components and testing small systems. His hands moved deftly, every movement deliberate and precise. Hours passed as Jack worked tirelessly. He encountered difficulties, of course. Some circuits were misaligned, some components required delicate rewiring. But he treated each obstacle as a puzzle to solve rather than a failure. Lyra was fascinated by the way he adapted, thinking creatively when standard solutions did not work. Finally, the device responded perfectly. Lights flickered on, energy flowed smoothly, and the system stabilized. Jack leaned back, wiping his hands on a cloth. "It should work now," he said simply. Lyra's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You have done more than repair it. You have understood it in a way few could. This is exceptional." Jack shrugged modestly. "I just like to pay attention. That usually helps." Lyra smiled, realizing that his humility was as remarkable as his skill. Many beings would have boasted, taken credit, or demanded rewards, but Jack simply saw a problem and solved it. His focus was on the work itself, not the recognition. After a moment of silence, Lyra spoke carefully. "There is something you should know. I am not just a traveler. I am someone who holds significant influence in this sector." Jack looked up, curious but calm. "Influence?" he asked. "Like a leader or an owner?" "Yes," she said softly. "I am Queen Lyra. My wealth, my resources, my responsibilities, they reach across many planets. Yet despite that, I sought your help because I recognize something in you that cannot be bought or commanded." Jack blinked, processing the revelation. He had repaired ships and devices belonging to countless species, but he had never encountered royalty, let alone one with immense power and influence. And yet his reaction was not awe or fear. I'm honored," he said quietly, "but I don't think I did anything extraordinary. I just did my best." Lyra smiled, understanding the depth of his humility. "That is what makes it extraordinary," she said. "Your skill is remarkable, yes, but your patience, your honesty, your dedication, that is rare. Even among the most advanced civilizations, I have rarely seen beings who approach challenges as you do." Jack shook his head gently. "I just fix things, that's all I know. If something is broken, I try to make it right. I don't think about influence or recognition." Lyra considered his words carefully. "And that is what sets humans apart. You do not measure yourself against others. You focus on what you can do. That is why I sought you out. That is why I watched you." The two spent the rest of the day together, Lyra observing and Jack repairing devices brought in by various travelers. She marveled at how naturally he adapted to each challenge, how his mind worked quickly yet carefully, and how he treated each problem as an opportunity to learn rather than an obstacle. Throughout the day, Lyra began to reveal small pieces of her identity, enough to test Jack's character. She spoke of trade networks, political structures, and the responsibilities she carried as a queen. Jack listened attentively, asking questions and showing interest, but he never flinched at the magnitude of her authority. He treated her as an individual, not a title, and that earned her quiet respect. By evening, word had begun to spread through the spaceport. The human who had impressed the richest alien queen was at work again. Travelers and traders began to gather quietly, curious to see the man who could solve challenges that seemed impossible. Some whispered nervously, unsure how to approach him, while others simply watched from a distance. Lyra noted how Jack remained entirely focused on his work, unbothered by attention. That, she realized, was another human trait that set them apart. They did not need validation to excel. They did not seek recognition to motivate themselves. Their commitment to the task, their dedication to excellence, and their focus on what mattered most allowed them to achieve greatness quietly. Late in the evening, Lyra presented Jack with another test, a small, damaged module from a distant alien ship. It was compact but complex, with systems that interacted in ways he had never encountered before. Jack studied it carefully, analyzing the patterns and testing possible solutions. "Interesting," he said softly. "This one is tricky, but we can handle it." He began disassembling the module, tracing circuits, checking energy flows, and carefully adjusting delicate components. Lyra watched, noting how he responded to setbacks. When a part failed or a system misaligned, he paused, thought through alternatives, and adjusted his approach. His calm persistence and willingness to adapt impressed her more than any technical skill could. After hours of focused work, the module finally functioned flawlessly. Jack leaned back, wiping his hands, a faint smile on his face. "That should do it," he said simply. Lyra's admiration was evident. "You have accomplished something extraordinary," she said softly. "It is not just the repair, but how you approached it, thoughtfully, patiently, and without fear or arrogance. You are unlike any human or alien I have known." Jack smiled, shrugging. "I just pay attention and keep trying. That's usually enough." Lyra realized that this approach was the key to human ingenuity. They did not rely on force, status, or wealth. They relied on thought, observation, persistence, and character. Jack Harper embodied all of these qualities, and she knew that he had the potential to change perceptions of humans across the galaxy. As the night settled over the spaceport, Jack cleaned his tools and organized his workshop. Lyra lingered nearby, watching him with quiet fascination. She had learned more about humans in the past few days than she had from decades of observation. Their intelligence, adaptability, and moral strength were remarkable. Jack Harper, in particular, had proven that humans could rise to challenges in ways that even the wealthiest and most powerful could not anticipate. Before leaving for the evening, Lyra approached him one final time. "I must tell you something more," she said softly. "Your work, your patience, your skill, they are exceptional, and I believe they will have consequences beyond this spaceport. Humans, in their quiet way, can achieve greatness that others overlook. You are proof of that." Jack looked at her, intrigued but modest. "I just do what I can," he said. "I don't think about consequences, I just fix what needs fixing." Lyra smiled, a faint glimmer of respect and admiration in her eyes. "And that is exactly why you are remarkable. You do not seek recognition, yet you earn it. You do not seek power, yet you influence events simply by being yourself." As she left, Jack returned to his work, unaware of the larger impact he had already begun to make. Lyra, meanwhile, reflected on what she had witnessed. Humans were not merely a species to observe. They were a force of ingenuity, character, and perseverance. One simple human, through patience, thoughtfulness, and integrity, had already begun to reshape her understanding of the galaxy. And so, life continued at the spaceport. Ships arrived and departed, travelers came and went, and Jack Harper quietly demonstrated the qualities that set humans apart. Lyra, still observing, understood that she had found something rare. A human whose quiet brilliance and unwavering character could inspire respect, admiration, and perhaps, one day, partnership on a scale she had never imagined. For Jack, it was just another day, another challenge, and another opportunity to help. For Lyra, it was the beginning of a revelation. Humans were extraordinary, not through power or wealth, but through their intelligence, persistence, and moral strength. And Jack Harper, unknowingly, had become the embodiment of that truth. The spaceport was alive with movement, the morning sun glinting off polished hulls and casting long reflections on the metal floors. Jack Harper moved through the bustle with quiet focus, already at work on a small cargo shuttle that had experienced minor system errors. To him, it was simply another opportunity to repair, to observe, and to learn. But today, something in the air felt different. There was a sense of expectation, subtle yet undeniable, as if the spaceport itself held its breath. Lyra had decided that the time had come to reveal her full identity. Over the past days, she had watched Jack Harper demonstrate patience, ingenuity, and humility unlike any being she had ever encountered. His actions had quietly influenced the perception of humans among the aliens at the port, earning them respect not through conquest or power, but through skill and character. Today, she intended to show him just how extraordinary his work had become. She entered his workshop without disguise, her regal presence immediately commanding attention. Travelers and traders paused to watch her move gracefully toward Jack. Her skin shimmered subtly in the sunlight, her attire gleaming with understated elegance, and her eyes reflected a depth of experience and authority. Jack looked up startled. "Lyra," he said, a mixture of surprise and recognition in his voice. Lyra smiled gently. "Yes," she said, "it is time you understood exactly who I am." Jack blinked, trying to process the magnitude of her words. "You mean really?" "Yes," she said. "I am Queen Lyra, the richest and most influential being in this sector. My decisions affect countless worlds. And yet, despite my power, I have watched you, a simple human, achieve things that even the most advanced beings struggle to do." Jack shook his head, modesty evident in every line of his posture. "I don't know what to say, I just fix what's broken. That's all I've ever done." Lyra stepped closer, her gaze steady. "That is exactly why you are extraordinary. You do not seek recognition, wealth, or power. You focus on the problem in front of you, approach it with patience, intelligence, and creativity, and you succeed where others might fail. That is the true measure of strength." Around them, the crowd in the spaceport whispered, realizing the significance of the encounter. Some travelers moved closer, curious to witness the human who had earned the admiration of a queen. Others looked on in awe, the quiet competence of a single human stirring something unexpected in their perception of the species. Jack studied her carefully, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "So all this, everything I've done, it matters?" he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "More than you can imagine. Your actions have begun to change the way humans are seen across multiple worlds. Others will now notice that your species is capable of ingenuity, perseverance, and character that cannot be measured by wealth, numbers, or technology alone. You have demonstrated something far greater than skill. You have demonstrated the essence of humanity." Jack's expression remained humble. "I never thought of it that way. I just try to help. That's what I know how to do." Lyra's eyes softened with admiration. "And that is why it is extraordinary. You see, most beings approach challenges with expectations of reward or fear of failure. You approach them with thought, patience, and honesty. That is something rare, something remarkable, something that inspires respect in ways few realize." Jack smiled faintly. "I suppose it's just the way I was raised. You learn to fix things and keep trying when nothing seems to work. That's life." Lyra laughed softly, a sound that carried warmth and amusement. "Life indeed, but your approach has consequences far beyond what you might expect." Travelers, traders, even leaders from distant worlds have begun to speak of the human who achieves the impossible quietly, patiently, without seeking glory. Your work has become an example, proof that humans are not to be underestimated. Jack shook his head gently, a touch of disbelief in his eyes. "I never wanted to be an example, I just wanted to help." "That is precisely why your example is powerful," Lyra said, "because it is authentic, unforced, and genuine. It is proof that humanity's true strength lies not in power or numbers, but in character, ingenuity, and determination." The crowd that had gathered in the workshop began to murmur. Some applauded quietly, others whispered in awe. A few approached cautiously, offering small tokens of gratitude or asking for advice, all eager to witness the human who had earned a queen's respect. Jack responded with the same patience and humility as ever, treating each person with care and attention. Lyra watched him, reflecting on what she had observed over the past days. Humanity, she realized, possessed a unique combination of traits: adaptability, intelligence, humility, and persistence. These were not simply skills. They were qualities that allowed humans to overcome challenges that others considered insurmountable. Jack Harper embodied all of these qualities in a way that left even her in awe. Later, as the sun began to set, Lyra led Jack to a quiet observation deck above the spaceport. Below them, ships docked and departed, Travelers moved in organized chaos, and the city hummed with life. The scale of her empire was evident, yet she focused entirely on the human beside her. "I have a proposition for you," Lyra said softly. "I wish to offer you a partnership not in wealth or status, but in sharing your skills and vision. You could help shape technology, influence trade networks, and teach others to approach challenges as you do." Jack considered her words carefully. I don't know if that's for me," he said. "I like working with my hands, fixing what needs fixing, helping people one problem at a time. I'm not sure I could take on something that big." Lyra nodded, understanding his hesitation. "I do not ask you to abandon who you are. You will remain yourself, a human who works, who thinks, who solves problems. But imagine the influence you could have if others learned from your approach. You would not be changing worlds with force, but with intellect, care, and example. That is how humans like you achieve greatness." Jack paused, considering the possibilities. He imagined teaching others to approach problems thoughtfully, showing the same patience and ingenuity that had earned him respect. He imagined influencing lives not through power but through example. Slowly, a smile crossed his face. "All right," he said finally, "I'll do it, but I want to keep helping people directly too. I don't want to lose that." Lyra's eyes gleamed with quiet triumph. "And that, Jack Harper, is why humans are extraordinary. You can inspire without seeking recognition, lead without demanding obedience, and change perceptions without force. That is your true power." In the following weeks, Jack's influence grew quietly but steadily. Aliens from distant planets traveled to the spaceport to see the human who had impressed a queen. Travelers and traders observed his methods, learning patience, ingenuity, and creative problem-solving. Jack continued his work with humility, never boasting, never seeking fame, simply solving problems and helping others. Lyra remained by his side, occasionally offering guidance or presenting complex challenges to test his skills further. Yet she never interfered with his natural approach. She had learned that humans thrived when allowed to act authentically, guided only by observation and understanding. Across the galaxy, the story of Jack Harper began to spread. Aliens and humans alike marveled at his ingenuity, patience, and humility. They began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity, realizing that humans were capable of remarkable achievements not through force or wealth, but through intelligence, persistence, and moral strength. One evening, as Jack repaired a damaged shuttle under the soft glow of the spaceport lights, Lyra approached him quietly. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked gently. Jack looked up, smiling faintly. "I've fixed some ships, that's all I know." Lyra laughed softly. "No, Jack, you've done more than that. You've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. You've earned respect not through power or fear, but through thought, care, and integrity. That is extraordinary." Jack shook his head humbly. "I never wanted to be extraordinary. I just did my best." Lyra smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And that is why you are extraordinary, because you do not seek recognition, yet you earn it. You do not seek power, yet you influence others profoundly. Humanity, through you, has become a symbol of what intelligence, patience, and character can achieve." As the twin suns set, casting golden light across the spaceport, Jack returned to his work, unaware of the profound impact he had made. Lyra watched him with quiet admiration, knowing that this simple human had changed not only her perception, but the perception of countless beings across the galaxy. The spaceport hummed with life, ships arrived and departed, and travelers shared stories of the human who could fix the impossible. Jack Harper, in his modest, unassuming way, had proven that true greatness was not in wealth or force, but in intelligence, humility, and persistence. Lyra smiled, realizing that she had found something rare, a human whose quiet brilliance had reshaped perceptions, inspired respect, and reminded even the most powerful beings that character, ingenuity, and determination could overcome any obstacle. And so life at the spaceport continued. Jack repaired, observed, and helped as he always had. Lyra remained nearby, quietly supporting him and marveling at humanity's potential. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson, that humans in their simplicity and brilliance could achieve greatness beyond measure. Jack Harper never sought fame, power, or recognition. He simply fixed what was broken, thought carefully, and persisted. And in doing so, he had earned something far greater: the respect of a queen, the admiration of countless beings, and the undeniable proof that humanity, in its quiet way, was truly extraordinary.